Okay, so you want to own a McDonald's. The drive-thru line wraps around the building twice. Every register is busy. The shake machine is down, and people are still queuing. You've sat in that line, done the math in your head, and thought, whoever owns this place is rich. And here's the thing, you're probably right. The average McDonald's in America rings up around $4 million a year in sales. Some locations do a lot more. The brand is so reliable that banks treat these restaurants almost like government bonds with a fryer attached. But here's what you can't see from the drive-thru line. The person who owns that restaurant usually doesn't own the building. In most cases, they don't own the land under it either. McDonald's does. And every month, one of the biggest checks that owner writes goes straight back to corporate, as rent. Because McDonald's stopped being a burger company a long time ago. Today, it operates one of the largest commercial property empires on the planet. The franchise system is how it fills those properties with tenants who never miss a payment. By the end of this video, you'll know what it actually costs to get in, including the $500,000 or more in cash they want to see before they'll take you seriously. You'll know where every dollar of those $4 million goes. And you'll understand why the owner of your local McDonald's is either the richest person in your neighborhood or trapped in the most expensive job they've ever had. Let's start with what McDonald's is actually selling you, because it is not what most people think. When you buy a McDonald's franchise, you do not buy a restaurant. You buy a license. A 20-year agreement that lets you operate one specific location under their brand, their menu, their rules, and their supervision. And there are two doors into the system. Door number one, you build a brand new location. This is the version everyone imagines, and it's the rarer one. McDonald's picks the market. McDonald's typically buys or leases the site. McDonald's approves the design. You pay to equip and open it. In a mature market like the United States, genuinely new sites don't come up that often. The map is already full. Door number two, and this is how most new owners actually get in. You buy an existing restaurant from an operator who is retiring or selling down. The fryers are on. The staff is hired. The sales history sits in a spreadsheet. You're buying a running machine, and you pay a price based on how much cash that machine spits out. Either way, before any of that, you have to get past the gate. And the gate is famous. McDonald's does not want your money nearly as much as it wants your life. They famously require what's called an owner-operator. That means no silent partners, no investment groups, no buying 3 stores from your laptop while a manager runs them. They expect you, personally, on-site, full-time. If you have a day job you'd like to keep, this conversation is already over. Then comes training. By McDonald's own materials, applicants spend 12 to 18 months training in a real restaurant. Nights and weekends, cleaning fryers, working the grill, running shifts. And for most of that time, you are not paid. It ends at a place they literally call Hamburger University, at headquarters in Chicago, where you study restaurant operations the way other people study for a pilot's license. Most people who start that pipeline never finish it, which is exactly how McDonald's wants it. They're not screening for money. Money is the easy part. They're screening for people who will protect a brand worth hundreds of billions of dollars, one parking lot at a time. So let's say you make it through. You're approved. Now comes the bill. And the bill has a strange shape. Here's a number that surprises people. The actual franchise fee, the payment for the right to use the McDonald's name, is only around $45,000. On this receipt, it's one of the smallest lines. It's everything else that gets you. For a new location, once you add kitchen equipment, seating, signage, the play area, the drive-thru systems, and opening costs, the current disclosed range runs from roughly $1.5 million to about $2.7 million. The kitchen alone is a small factory. Those fryers, grills, and screens are specified by corporate, and you buy them at corporate standard. Buying an existing restaurant? The price follows the cash flow. A high-volume store in a good market can cost $2-3 million or more. You're not paying for used fryers. You're paying for the proven river of money that flows through them. And here's the rule that filters out almost everyone watching this video. McDonald's requires that a large chunk of your investment comes from your own money. The commonly cited floor is $500,000, and some current guides put it at $750,000. Not borrowed, not a loan from your cousin. Liquid, documented, unborrowed cash. They will let you finance a portion of the rest through banks, and banks love lending against golden arches. But the entry stake has to be yours. Why so strict? Because McDonald's has learned, over 70 years, what kills restaurants. It usually isn't bad burgers, it's debt. An owner drowning in loan payments cuts staff, defers cleaning, and cheapens the customer experience. Corporate would rather turn away 1,000 eager buyers than let one undercapitalized operator tarning the sign. So the club is expensive to join. Fine, it's McDonald's. The line wraps around the building twice. Surely the machine pays for itself. Well, let's follow the money, because this is where the story bends. Take that average store, doing around $4 million a year, and walk through where it goes. These proportions vary store to store, but the shape is consistent. First, the food itself. Beef, buns, potatoes, packaging, syrup for that unreliable shake machine. Food and paper commonly eat something like 30% of sales. That's over $1 million gone before anyone's wages are paid. Second, people. A McDonald's runs on dozens of employees across shifts, plus managers, plus payroll taxes and benefits. Labor commonly runs another 25 to 30%. In a tight labor market, more. That's roughly another $1 million. Then utilities, insurance, maintenance, repairs, uniforms, trash collection, card processing fees. The unglamorous plumbing of retail. Call it several $100,000 more. And then we reach the interesting lines. The ones that go to your franchisor. There's the service fee, the royalty. For almost 30 years, it sat at 4% of gross sales. Then, starting in 2024, McDonald's raised it to 5% for new franchisees. If you're joining now, you're paying the new rate. There's the advertising contribution, commonly around another 4%, which funds those national campaigns you've been humming since childhood. And then there's rent. Rent to McDonald's, your landlord, and it's often the single biggest of the three. Depending on the deal, rent commonly lands somewhere between 8 and 15% of sales, and at some locations it runs past 20%. Stack those together and your franchisor is collecting on the order of 20% of everything that crosses the counter. Not 20% of your profit, 20% of gross sales. Corporate gets paid whether you had a good year or a terrible one. So what's left for you, the owner, after the food, the people, the plumbing, and the golden pipes? In recent years, industry reporting has put average owner cash flow somewhere around $400,000 to $500,000 per store per year. And that number has been sliding, down roughly 10% from its post-pandemic peak as wages and food costs climbed. $500,000 a year sounds wonderful. Now read the fine print. That's cash flow, not take-home profit. It's measured before you repay the millions you borrowed to buy the store in the first place. Subtract the loan payments and your actual reward for owning one of the most reliable businesses in human history is a good living, earned 60 hours a week, standing next to the friars you spent $2 million to stand next to. And while you're doing that math, notice something. Corporate's cut, the royalty, the ad fund, the rent, came off the top. Around 20% of gross, collected before your costs, immune to your bad months. Which raises the obvious question. If the owner sweats for what's left and corporate skims 20% without cooking a single fry, then what business is McDonald's actually in? A piano player answered that question in 1956. His name was Harry Sonneborn, former musician turned financial mind and one of Ray Kroc's first key hires. In the mid-50s, McDonald's had a problem that sounds absurd today. It was famous, it was growing, and it was nearly broke. Selling 15-cent hamburgers made the franchisees a living, but the tiny franchise fees trickling up to corporate barely covered the office rent. Sonneborn's idea had nothing to do with food. Years later, he explained it to investors in words that became legend. We are not technically in the food business, we are in the real estate business. The only reason we sell 15-cent hamburgers is because they are the greatest producer of revenue, from which our tenants can pay us our rent. Here's the machine he built. A company entity, Franchise Realty Corporation, would find the land, buy it or lock it up on a long lease, put the restaurant on it, and then sublease the whole thing to the franchisee, with a markup. Rent, forever, from a tenant whose success corporate could practically guarantee because corporate controlled the brand, the menu, and the marketing that kept the tenant busy. Think about the elegance of that. A normal landlord finds a stranger, prays they pay rent, and can't do anything about their tenant's sales. McDonald's manufactures its own perfect tenant. It selects them, trains them for a year, takes $500,000 of their own savings as commitment, and then hands them the world's most powerful customer magnet. Of course they make rent. Today, that machine spans more than 40,000 locations worldwide, and roughly 95% of them are run by franchisees. The company's property empire is commonly valued at over $40 billion. And look at what corporate actually collects. In a recent year, McDonald's took in about $10 billion from franchisees in rent, against $5.5 billion in royalties. Nearly 2/3 of everything that flows up from franchisees arrives as a rent check. And the lease is also the leash. Your franchise agreement and your lease are tied together. You can't decide to move your successful restaurant across the street to a cheaper building, because your landlord and your franchisor are the same entity, and they will simply say no. If you lose the franchise, you lose the location. If you lose the location, there is nothing to sell. Whatever leverage you think you have, the deed says otherwise. So when you buy a McDonald's, understand your true position in the food chain. You are not a business partner. You are a rigorously screened, $500,000 committed, personally liable tenant, the most creditworthy tenant capitalism has ever designed. And even after the rent clears, corporate has one more way of reaching into the till. This one, almost nobody outside the system talks about. Every few years, McDonald's redesigns itself. New dining rooms, digital menu boards, self-order kiosks, app integration, delivery systems, dual drive-thru lanes. Corporate announces the future of the brand to Wall Street. Wall Street applauds, and then the bill for the future arrives at the franchisee's office. Remodels are, in effect, mandatory. When corporate modernizes, you modernize, and major renovation programs have commonly cost operators hundreds of thousands of dollars per store, sometimes with corporate chipping in, sometimes less so. Refuse for long enough, and you should not expect your 20-year agreement to be renewed. And you'll recall what non-renewal means when your landlord is also your franchisor. Then there's pricing. You'd think the owner sets the prices. Only partly. Corporate runs national value promotions, the famous cheap bundles and app deals, because value drives traffic, and traffic drives gross sales. And corporate's royalties, ad fees, and percentage rent are calculated on gross sales. Notice the incentive gap. A $5 meal deal can be great for corporate's 20% and brutal for your margin. When input costs spike, when beef and wages climb, corporate's percentages don't feel it the way your margin does. Corporate gets paid on the top line. You survive on the bottom one. Add the small print of the ecosystem. Technology fees for the platforms, delivery commissions, approved suppliers, specified equipment. None of it is a scandal. All of it is the deal. You bought the world's most polished machine, and polished machines come with a maintenance contract you don't control. At this point, you might reasonably ask why anyone signs this deal at all. Here's why. Because for one specific type of person, this system is a wealth engine almost without equal. You just have to stop thinking like the owner of a restaurant. Go back to the numbers. One store. Call it $400,000 or $500,000 a year of cash flow, minus your loan payments, and you're living in the building to get it. That's a well-paid, deeply unglamorous job. Now run 10 stores. 10 stores throws off cash flow on the order of $4 to $5 million a year, before your head office costs and your debt. And here's the shift. At that scale, you're no longer flipping anything. You employ supervisors. You run a head office. Your job becomes hiring leaders, watching dashboards, and negotiating with corporate as someone they take seriously. The single store owner bought a job. The multi-store operator built a system on top of corporate system. That is the actual McDonald's wealth playbook. And it's why the average American franchisee operates several restaurants, not one. It's also why the club stays closed. When a retiring operator sells, the natural buyer is the proven operator in the next territory. Already trained, already trusted, already rich. Restaurants pass between insiders and across generations. Some families have held their territories for 50 years. The cruel irony of the whole system. The surest way to be approved for a McDonald's is to already be wealthy, patient, and willing to work like you're broke. The people who most need to fantasy are exactly the people the gate is built to keep out. So, knowing all of it, the gate, the split, the rent, the leash, the scale game, is owning one actually worth it? Here's the honest scorecard. As a bet, a McDonald's franchise is about the safest operating business a private individual can buy. The failure rate of franchise locations is famously low. Banks lend against the arches for a reason. If you get in, run it seriously, and reinvest, the odds you go broke are tiny. Almost nothing else with a 7-figure price tag can promise that. As a piece of ownership, it's one of the least free businesses on earth. You didn't invent the product. You can't change the menu. You don't own the dirt. Your landlord sets your remodel schedule, takes a fifth of your gross, and decides in 20 years whether you still have a business at all. You bought certainty, and you paid for it with control. That trade is the entire secret. Most businesses offer freedom with a real chance of failure. McDonald's offers near certainty with almost no freedom. And the market price of near certainty turns out to be about $2 million, a year of unpaid training, and a 20-year lease with the most sophisticated landlord in commercial history. So the next time you're in that drive-thru line, look past the menu board. The kid at the window works for the owner. The owner, 60 hours a week, works for the brand. And the brand, patiently, quietly, collects rent on the whole street. Everyone in that line thinks McDonald's sells burgers. Now you know what they actually sell. The most expensive, most reliable tenancy in the world. And they're very selective about their tenants. If you want to see how the same machine works on businesses you walk past every day, from gyms to gas stations, that's what this channel does. Subscribe and pick your next building.